Welcome to the 8th Annual Black Sustainability Summit, this October 6th through the 8th, 2023. We give thanks to all who have made this event possible, those named and unnamed, to each one of our sponsors, from Gangsters to Growers to Southern Sare, all the way to those who have come through to give us support. Aya Paper Company with their donations, Seed to Shirt by sponsoring our t-shirts this year, National Black Food and Justice Alliance for their commitment to coalition work, and Adiki, Aya International Development. We appreciate you, along with Awali Veganic Homestead. As you tune into presentations, kindly trust and verify what's being shared.
Hi, everyone. My name is Diamond Spratling, and I am the founder and executive director for Girl Plus Environment. We are a 501c3 national nonprofit created to educate, to engage, and most importantly, to empower and immobilize Black and Brown women, girls, and non-binary individuals to stand up for all things climate and environmental justice in their own neighborhoods. We've been around for about 4.5 years now, but I've been privileged to do this work for about 8 years now. So I'm going to be talking all about climate storytelling and the importance of getting younger generations involved in this very important fight for environmental justice. So just to share a little bit about what I'll be talking about today is, first, we're going to talk about why are we talking about climate movement in the first place. Then we're going to talk about why does this climate story matter for you, and why and how you should be getting involved into this work. Then we'll talk a little bit about your story, how to share your story, and then also talk about my story, what kind of caught me into this amazing work. So why exactly climate action? Well, there are many reasons. The biggest thing for me is that it impacts me and my family every single day, whether it goes into whether we have access to food, whether we're able to go outside, but there are also many other issues specifically around climate action. So being able to mitigate climate change, understanding that our environment has everything to do with everything that we have access to or what we don't have access to, even thinking about our ecosystems and understanding how everything is interconnected or interrelated between each other, whether it's housing, whether it's health, whether it's our environment, whether it's our jobs and what we have access to. All of those things are connected. So when we think about health, when we think about the fact that many of our kids in our community have asthma, or many of the men in our family die at the age of early 60s because of heart disease, because of strokes, because of all these things that we're exposed to in our environment, those are different things that kind of bring into this reason for why climate action is essentially very critical. Even when we think about economic opportunities and jobs, whether or not we're able to drive or walk or take the bus to our jobs or our place of work, all of those things are interconnected to our environments and what we see as things that we have access to or things that we don't have access to. But now I want to shift and talk a little bit about why climate justice. And this is something that is significantly critical to me in my personal life as well. So the first thing is thinking about what those equitable solutions are. Yes, we know that nowadays there are so many innovative ways for people to think about climate, and everyone's thinking about EV chargers and all of these things. But first and foremost, we have to go back to our roots. We have to think about how exactly our climates and our environments are impacting us in general. So whether we have access to different things in our environments, and ensuring that those solutions that are being brought to the table are equitable and relatable and ultimately reflective of the needs that we are seeing within our very own Black and Brown communities. The second thing is the intersectionality of it all, understanding that climate justice is going to take so much more than just mitigating things in our environment. It takes those environmental, those social, and those economic issues for us to be able to come together and really create tangible change, especially as it relates to climate action. The last thing that I mentioned here on this slide is understanding that we are all on one earth, on one planet. And so bringing that into the conception and understanding that it has to take collective action, no matter what your political views are, no matter what your needs are or your priorities are. We all ultimately just want to be able to live on this planet safely and be healthy and have a very long life expectancy. So understanding that that is kind of our shared understanding or just shared views as just being a human on this planet. So I want to talk a little bit about climate storytelling. So climate storytelling is basically the practice of using storytelling techniques and narratives to communicate the complex issues and impacts of climate change. So storytelling is something that's actually not very new at all. Our ancestors have been storytellers for years. Like I can tell you different stories that my grandparents, my great-grandparents have told me, and those things have stuck with me, and I'll be able to share those stories with my future generations as well. So storytelling is something that we had always been in touch with, but now we're trying to bring that more into the climate work that we're doing as well. So why is storytelling? Why is storytelling so important? Well, ultimately, storytelling helps to build power. So it builds that connection and that empathy within our community of being able to share a lived experience, being able to share something personal about your life that you have experienced and share that with someone else so that they can begin to visualize and understand where you are coming from and what your needs are and what's important to you. So that's the first reason why storytelling is so important. But it also is really great for that meaning making and that sense of identity, of understanding, wow, this individual went through the same thunderstorm that my grandmother went through as well, or they have this shared identity of having to go out and pick crops, whatever that shared identity is, that kind of helps to bring people together and make them feel connected and say, hey, I do have similarities with this individuals, and they kind of understand what I'm going through as well. So maybe we can begin to support each other. The other piece here is engagement and communications. I don't like to go to my community with a bunch of numbers and a bunch of technical terms, because that's not something that gets my personal community excited and driven to take action on environmental issues. And so using stories, being personal and sharing different things that you have experienced and that brings you joy, that's something that I think is more meaningful to go into our community and share. So why you? Why do you need to tell your story? Why should you even be talking about climate? Why should you even be talking about the environment? Well, the first thing is that there are power in numbers. There's power in the number of people in this movement. And we know that numbers doesn't always drive power, but the number of people that we have in this space really helps to increase knowledge and awareness so that we know what exactly we can and should be doing to advocate for clean, healthy environments within our neighborhoods. Second is no one else can tell your story. Your story is yours. You own that story. And so you should be the one to tell why you get up every single day and do this really meaningful work. But also understanding that stories can lead to action. That's why we tell stories, because we're trying to stimulate durable power with communities so that we can find what resonates with all of us. Why do we do this work? But also just understanding that your story is worthy, no matter if you decided to do this work just because you woke up and felt like you wanted to advocate for your community, or whether or not you experienced something personal that got you into this work, but also helps you to make connections and to help motivate others to do this powerful work as well. So now I want to shift gears a little bit and talk about this really great framework that I have been using in my work, especially as it relates to climate storytelling. And this actually came from Marshall Gans, which I definitely recommend folks to look into. But Marshall Gans basically put together this entire framework called the story of self, us, and now. So the story of self is basically helping you to figure out, why do you get up every single morning and advocate for these issues, whether it's food justice, whether it's environmental justice, whether it's housing and gentrification? Why do you get up every single morning and do that work? And before you can ask other people to sign your petition, to do your work, you have to figure out why you are doing the work in the first place. The second piece here is that story of us. So figuring out what is the mutual connection or mutual benefit or concern between you and your community, or you or the individuals who you're trying to engage into this work. Once you find that shared connection, then that's a connection that you're able to bring to the table and basically have a shared understanding of, wow, we both really just want to get ahead economically. So whether it's like we both want to secure great jobs, and that is a great thing to have a mutual benefit with, or a mutual connection with someone else. The last piece of this framework is that story of now. And that's basically figuring out how your story and your work is urgent. So asking, why do people need to take action now? Why do we need to stand up to Public Service Commission now? Why do we need to advocate for energy justice now? Finding out and figuring out what the urgency is in your message and in your work will go a very long way, because we have to understand that in our community, we have so many competing priorities. There's so much going on. So how in the world do we expect our community to advocate for, one additional thing? We have to make sure that it's clear in our communications, the urgency and the intersectionality of our work too, because we know when we're advocating for food justice, that's also economic, that's housing, that's health, that's environment, that's so many things. So making sure that it's clear to folks what the urgency is of your work. And that is the framework of the story of self, us, and now. All right, just want to share some insights into storytelling. So first, understanding that it's your story, not theirs. So making sure that you're sharing your own personal story. And if you do want to share someone else's story, because you may say, hey, I heard this really amazing story that I want other people to know, that is perfectly fine. Ask for permission from the individual whose story you heard, but also be truthful in those stories too. Each story is worthy and each story matters. So it doesn't mean that, oh, this person's story is way more compelling, I don't want to share my own. Making sure that you're being truthful in yourself and why you get into this space. Next thing that I want to share is that your story can look like whatever you'd like. A lot of times we think of storytelling as something that has to be done orally, but we have to understand it can be written stories, it can be through film, it can be through music, artwork, spoken word, whatever it is, whatever you feel comfortable with doing and whatever feels most compelling to your community, that is the story that you should be telling. All right, that is all that I have for my session, but I wanted to thank you all so much for sticking around with me. I'm not here in person to answer any questions, but I did leave all of my contact information for individuals who may have any questions, concerns, or want to chat more about storytelling. I'm always open and happy to do that. Understand that your story is critical, it's important, and I hope that you all do get your stories going. And another thing that I did share is a storytelling workshop. So hopefully you all will have access to that worksheet so that you can begin to draft out and figure out what your story is. But my ask for you today is to begin, as you continue to go through these sessions, thinking about what your story is, why you get into this work, and how you can share that story with everyone else who's interested and curious about saving their communities and working to achieve environmental justice. Thanks so much, y'all, and I hope you enjoy the rest of your session. Bye.